charges.
Well,
It was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared. And I am so grateful for the marriage I have to this amazing woman behind me.
You've admitted that you had sex at that hotel in October 2017. You said it was consensual, isn't that correct?
Anything,
You've admitted that it was consensual, and you were still married, and you just had a child by another woman.
again,
How do you explain your
completely
judgment?
false charges against me.
You
Fully investigated, and I was completely clear.
You have admitted that you had sex while you were married to wife 2 after you just had fathered a child by wife 3. You've admitted that. Now, if it had been a sexual assault, that would be disqualifying to be Secretary of Defense, wouldn't it?
It was a false claim then and a false claim now.
If it had been a sexual assault,
Fox News anchor and Donald Trump's nominee for Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, had his first Senate confirmation hearing today. And it was honestly one of the worst things I have ever seen. And even if you have seen lots of clips from this hearing, it is not enough to cover it all. And that's why we are going to be getting into more of the disastrous interactions that Hegseth had today that just show completely how unfit he is. But before we do that, I want to talk about some new reporting from CNN suggesting that Pete Hegseth already has the Republican votes necessary in the Senate to confirm his nomination as Secretary of Defense. Now that is a scary prospect one day into this thing, and with more reporting still yet to come out and more questions to be asked. It is not all but secure. But that is scary, that Pete Hegseth, someone of such low moral character and someone who is completely unfit to do such an important job, could just skate right on through. But that is this Trump administration not looking out for keeping you protected, not looking out for making sure our country is run correctly, but just to find the Fox host who is going to stir up the most controversy, cause the most problems, and yell the loudest on behalf of Donald Trump. Not cost, but chaos is what Trump is focused on. And I want to talk more about that. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really means the world to me. Now, like I said, I want to talk more about Hegseth and his nomination. But first, I want to check out some of the most damning clips from his hearing today.
That occurred in Monterey, California in October 2017. At that time, you were still married to your second wife, correct?
I believe so.
And you had just fathered a child by a woman who would later become your third wife, correct?
Senator, I was falsely charged, fully investigated, and completely cleared.
So you think you are completely cleared because you committed no crime. That's your definition of cleared? You had just fathered a child 2 months before by a woman that was not your wife. I am shocked that you would stand here and say you're completely cleared. Can you so casually cheat on a second wife and cheat on the mother of a child that had been born 2 months before, and you tell us you are completely cleared?
Senator,
how is that a complete clear?
Senator, her child's name is Gwendolyn Hope Hegseth, and she's a child of God, and she's 7 years old.
And she was, and you cheated on the mother of that child less than 2 months after that daughter was born, didn't you?
Those were false charges. Well, it was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared. And I am so grateful for the marriage I have to this amazing woman behind me.
You've admitted that you had sex at that hotel in October 2017. You said it was consensual, isn't that correct?
Anything,
You've admitted that it was consensual, and you were still married, and you just had a child by another woman.
Again,
how do you explain your judgment?
Completely false charges against me.
You
fully investigated, and I was completely clear.
You have admitted that you had sex while you were married to wife 2 after you just had fathered a child by wife 3. You've admitted that. Now, if it had been a sexual assault, that would be disqualifying to be Secretary of Defense, wouldn't it?
It was a false claim then and a false claim now.
If it had been a sexual assault, that would be disqualifying to be Secretary of Defense, wouldn't it?
That was a false claim.
So you
talking about a hypothetical.
So you can't tell me whether someone who has committed a sexual assault is disqualified from being Secretary of Defense?
Senator, I know in my instance, and I'm talking about my instance only, it was a false claim.
But you acknowledge, that you cheated on your wife, and that you cheated on the woman by whom you had just fathered a child. You have admitted that.
I will allow your words to speak for themselves.
You're not retracting that today. That's good. I assume that in each of your weddings, you've pledged to be faithful to your wife. You've taken an oath to do that, haven't you?
Senator, as I've acknowledged to everyone in this committee, not a perfect person, not claiming to be.
But no, I just asked a simple question. You've taken an oath like you would take an oath to be Secretary of Defense in all of your weddings to be faithful to your wife. Is that correct?
I have failed in things in my life, and thankfully I'm redeemed by my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
In finalizing divorces,
January 2013, you told a Fox News interviewer that women in the military simply couldn't measure up to men in the military, saying that allowing women to serve in combat roles would force the military to lower the bar. You picked up on that same theme in 2015, making remarks on Fox News, referring to women in combat as, quote, it would erode standards. June 2024, you said on Ben Shapiro's podcast, quote, women shouldn't be in combat at all. And then, of course, we've talked about it in 2024, you published a book, and you say on page 26 of your book, we need moms, but not in the military, especially in combat units. Page 48 of your book, you claim that women should not be in combat roles because men are distracted by women. And then 10
specific a little bit, and I'm glad that you mentioned it. Can you name the importance of at least one of the nations in the ASEAN, and what type of agreement we have with at least one of those nations? And how many nations are in ASEAN, by the way?
I couldn't tell you the exact amount of nations in that, but I know we have allies in South Korea and Japan and in AUKUS with Australia, trying to work on submarines with them.
Mr. Hegseth, none of those countries are in ASEAN.
Across.
None of those 3 countries that you've mentioned are in ASEAN. I suggest you do a little homework before you prepare for these types of negotiations. Listen, Mr. Hegseth, this is...
Do you agree that there are some orders that can be given by the Commander-in-Chief that would violate the U.S. Constitution?
Senator, thank you for your service. But I reject the premise that President Trump is going to be giving illegal orders.
No, I'm not saying he will, but do you believe there is such a thing as an illegal order that Joe Biden or any other president, Donald Trump, could give? Is there anything that a commander-in-chief could ask you to do with the uniformed military that would be in violation of the U.S. Constitution?
Senator, anybody of any party could give an order that is against the Constitution or against the law.
Right. Okay. So are you saying that you would stand in the breach and push back if you were given an illegal order?
I start by saying I reject the premise that President Trump will be giving any illegal orders at all.
This isn't a hypothetical, okay? Your predecessor in a Trump administration, Secretary Esper, was asked and did use uniformed military to clear unarmed protesters.
Virginia, you needed to be carried out of the event for being intoxicated.
Senator, anonymous smears.
Just true or false? Very simple. Summer of 2014 in Cleveland, drunk in public with the CVA team.
Anonymous smears.
I'm just asking for true or false questions, true or false answers. An event in North Carolina, drunk in front of 3 young female staff members after you had instituted a no alcohol policy and then reversed it. True or false?
Anonymous smears.
December of 2014 at the CVA Christmas party at the Grand Hyatt at Washington, D.C., you were noticeably intoxicated and had to be carried up to your room. Is that true or false?
Anonymous smears.
Another time, a CVA staffer stated that you passed out in the back of a party bus. Is that true or false?
Anonymous smears. Charges. Well, no, fully investigated, and I was completely cleared. And I am so grateful for the marriage I have to this amazing woman behind me.
You've admitted that you had sex at that hotel in October 2017. You said it was consensual, isn't that correct?
Anything?
You've admitted that it was consensual, and you were still married, and you just had a child by another woman.
Again,
how do you explain your judgment?
Completely false charges against me.
You
fully investigated, and I was completely clear.
You have admitted that you had sex while you were married to wife 2 after you just had fathered a child by wife 3. You've admitted that. Now, if it had been a sexual assault, that would be disqualifying to be Secretary of Defense, wouldn't it?
It was a false claim then and a false claim now.
If it had been a sexual assault, that would be disqualifying to be Secretary of Defense, wouldn't it?
That was a false claim.
So you
Talking about a hypothetical.
So you can't tell me whether someone who has committed a sexual assault is disqualified from being Secretary of Defense?
Senator, I know in my instance, and I'm talking about my instance only, it was a false claim.
But you acknowledge
And it was
but
fully
you acknowledge
investigated.
that you cheated on your wife and that you cheated on the woman by whom you had just fathered a child. You have admitted that.
I will allow your words to speak for themselves.
You're not retracting that today. That's good. I assume that.
Like I said, one of the worst performances I have ever seen in a Senate hearing, and it's not just that Pete Hegseth has such low moral character. Obviously, the question about infidelity that Tim Kinane raised about Pete Hegseth and his many wives doesn't really represent family values. Chlo MAGA, though, doesn't care too much about that, considering Donald Trump exists. But you look at this man's lack of any character at all, lack of morality. That's one thing, a horrible thing, but that's one thing. Take a look at his complete inexperience with running high-level organizations, and then the little experience that he does have, he's failed. And then the little information that he has about the job he would be doing, he doesn't understand this is a guy completely ill-equipped on all levels to have one of the most important jobs in our government, just full stop. That is Pete Hegseth, and it's just ridiculous to think that Republican senators are up to vote for this guy. Tim Miller of the Bulwark talks about how no one in the Senate, no Republican would want Pete Hegseth as the principal of their child's school, to be their teacher, to be their postman. Someone who is completely unreliable and is on gin and tonic number 3 before breakfast is done is not someone you want running any operation in your life, and certainly not the Defense Department. But this is who MAGA is. Like, lined up behind why? Because if you saw the clips of Republican senators from this hearing, who I didn't want to show, but we can certainly talk about, they were railing against DEI and wokeness in the military. And there was one poster made by a senator talking about this woke military, in which the word military was spelled incorrectly. Yeah, so maybe we do need a little wokeness. Maybe you do need to wake up enough in the military that you can spell the word correctly, but this is what Pete Hegseth is all about. He's all about railing against DEI and the wokeness and the whatever it may be, not focused, mind you, on making sure Americans are safe. That's not what he's focused on, or correctly running the largest organization in the United States of over 3 million people. That's not what Pete Hegseth is going to be focused on. He is going to be the champion of the anti-D, whatever that means, agenda. The anti-woke, whatever that means, agenda. Not you, I, by, but just spouting off about culture wars. Because that, of course, is what the Trump presidency is about. Chaos, confusion, and just general anger, chaos. This is what it's about. This is their focus to distract from their own failures. And Hegseth is a perfect example of that exactly. And it's why we have to use him as an example and call him out, which we are going to be doing every single day on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you're stuck around at the end, you can drop a blue bar in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.